All right, man. Yeah, we lost phone and internet for probably 2 hours.
Why? Do y'all have a storm or something?
Yeah, we had a pretty big one. We had 2 patio heaters go down, which is so irritating because they have those glass cylinders in the center. So they shatter all over the patio, which is always fun when you've got 8-year-olds.
Have them pick them up with their feet.
Yeah, it's a good way to make sure that none are left because they will definitely find them.
I'm going to send you, we did the same thing for wine and spirits. It's the exact same story, man. So I think we talked about that before, that we thought that in-home consumption was going up. It just proves it. I mean, people, I can't go over to Harry's house for a beer, JB. I can't sit by the campfire and spit Maker's Mark into the fire with you. I can't go to Kaumil's house and grab a beverage. So fuck it. I'm doing it at the house. That's right. You can see it.
Well, they've always said, that we're sort of a recession-proof industry. When times are good, people drink. When times are bad, they drink more.
It's true. It's true.
I think it's definitely playing out.
You guys looked at those category-weighted distribution numbers, right? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't yet.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so Harry,
my job to do that.
It is your job. Did you notice all of the reds, the declines in distribution for some of the big brands, big packages? And I thought about that. I'm saying there's no fucking way that stores are discontinuing some of these big brands across. It's out of stocks.
It's out of stocks. That's the only thing I can figure out. It's out of stocks.
And the only good thing to that is if I'm a Tito's fan and I only buy Tito's and it's out of stock at my local store, I am going to try a different vodka. We're seeing that. We're seeing some of these smaller players get some bumps because they're the go-to. They're in the bullpen, which I think is kind of cool.
Now he'll only be 9 times as big as everybody else combined instead of 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Tito.
Yeah.
But listen, my local, I go to this little liquor store. It's like a little independent, and his marketing, he's a big Goomba, and his marketing is putting a sex doll out in the parking lot that says we're open. And somebody last week went and chopped her head off. So it's the creepiest thing. I'll show you a picture of it when I edit it. So
I guess it's creepy because he left it there.
Yeah, it's still out there. And so I went in and and he was out of Tito's, of course. And I said, why do you keep the headless doll? He goes, hey, business is still up. It must be working. And I'm like, you really think that's the reason it's working? It has nothing to do with the coronavirus? Jesus Christ.
Never
guys,
did
it's been 3 weeks since we talked. And I wanted to, the reason that I wanted to do this again is because you guys were spot on just about everything. If you go back and listen to that podcast, back on Sunday, the 21st of May, it was very spot on. And like you said, we saw huge pantry loading, then a lot of softness, and now I think we're seeing re-pantry loading, not at the levels of that week, but certainly as Bump put out this morning, we're seeing kind of the next wave of consumption. And so the question I have for all of y'all, because I think this is the most important question, for the beer industry, is consumption more even with the on-premise out of the equation? So in other words, are people drinking at home overall? Is it going to make up for the loss of on-premise?
I can just take a quick stab at that. I mean, we have had a handful of craft clients who are actually up, period, even without the on-premise being gone. Now, a lot of those were obviously heavily chain distribution heavy before and not so much reliant on the tap rooms. I'm not talking about little long tail nano guys who have lost all their on-premise business, but more established players, particularly those that were heavily weighted to chain. We've had a handful who've said we're actually up, period, even without the on-premise.
Yeah, look, I think we've got a shot at it, shot at positive, certainly a shot at flat. And I think a couple components, if you break it down, is first of all, beverages and soft drinks and in beverage alcohol, soft drinks and beer really, is you drink more if you have more around you. So if you've got cases of Coca-Cola or cases of Bud Lights, whatever they are, you'll drink more if you have more at home. That's kind of your first piece. The second piece, though, is everybody pantry loaded. So you kick up in that pantry load phase. But now that we're also kind of settling down, if you think about the volume of what they've pantry loaded with, and Bump's got great data on this, is people are pantry loading on the stuff that's the most consumed. So when we often look at growth rates for how much growth rates are changing, down 2%, up 2%, whatever it is. But if you still look at the bulk of the consumption, you had the pantry loading in exactly those products that most people were consuming. So you're filled up everybody's homes with the stuff that has the highest share. And that's going to go the quickest. There isn't a lot of experimenting. There isn't a lot of, I may want this, I may want that. Instead, it's sticking with what you know, sticking with people drank a lot of in massive pack sizes, having it in your home. And now I think that initially, when we all got together and the first time we had a chat on this, there was a lot of kind of shock factor. We were realizing this is something serious and we're all going to have to mobilize and figure out what it means. And then obviously it is very serious, but what I think has changed for the consumer is they're starting to figure it out, right? They're starting to figure out, hey, we're going to be home for a while. We need to figure out how to operate in this environment. And I think that's probably what's led to the numbers that Bump's been showing being as strong for as long as they've been. I think that's probably a surprise to many is how long those numbers have stayed strong. I think many would have expected a far greater fade, if not negative, by now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a surprise to me, and especially since grocery chains have, they've been, you talked about out of stocks, they've been pretty restrictive on when you can deliver, is what I'm hearing from distributors. It's a lot tighter window to get in there and get those trucks and offload your beer.
I've heard the same.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the opposite approach. I'm looking at the total industry. What are we saying? 200 million barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on premise, just for easy math, let's say it's 20% of the total business. Why? That's 40 million barrels that's going to dry up. Not all of it, because that's an annual number, obviously. I'd like to say that I agree with JB and Kaumil for all the reasons you guys stated. We're looking at the 5th consecutive week of double-digit growth in the off-premise arena. I just don't think that all those tasting rooms and all the liquid centers and the favorite bars and restaurants and taverns that folks go to, they're missing all of that. I think we're missing all that. And that we have seen in-home consumption of beverage alcohol, beer, wine, and spirits go up. I just don't think it's enough to offset all of those missed occasions right now. I was trying to run some numbers in my head, and it's not working right now, but over the course of the year, we're talking about 70 million cases we have to make up in order to get that 20% volume loss. That's an awful lot of volume. And even if we say it's for a quarter of the year, that's 17, 18 million cases. And I don't see that.
If I misspoke, I apologize. I don't think there's any way it offsets it. I said we have a short handful of clients who have said they're net positive. The vast majority, it's not making it up. And the ones that have gone what I would call all black year over year, the consistent theme is they have figured out a way to do takeaway to go beer.
Yeah.
People coming there to buy the takeaway beer from the brewery. That has been a surprising lift for most of them. That's been a very consistent theme, that their takeout business has been bigger than they thought. But I agree with you, Bump. It's absolutely an anomaly for people that are what I would call all black.
Yeah.
The on premise. I don't think we'll ever make up the whole nut.
I don't either. I mean, a big piece of it, Harry, but C-stores aren't growing the way they used to. Single serves are down. All those at-home occasions. Drugstores now gone back in the red. Super centers, grocery stores, liquor stores doing phenomenal. But I just think that folks sitting at home are getting exposed to the liquors, and are getting exposed to the ready-to-drink, pre-mixed cocktails and stuff like that. And an awful lot of beer volume getting purchased and consumed at home. But Harry, you know, if I understood your question properly, I just don't think there's enough volume in the off trade to offset the zero in that on trade right now. I'm not seeing that.
And you know, and a lot of this is going to have to play out on how long the stay at home goes, because and when it does come back, and it will, when it does come back, I just don't see people crowding into bars and concessionaires, stadiums. You know, there's going to be a little gun shy about being shoulder to shoulder with everybody in a packed bar. And I think it's, we wrote about it this morning with John Taffer, saying everything about the bar and restaurant business is about revenue per square foot. Well, when you have to put everybody 20 feet apart from each other, it's going to be tough, man. And I pegged it at 20% of on-premise not ever coming back. He said it's more like 30 to 40%. What does that mean for
That's
our?
the number I heard too, is a 30% number. And I use the analogy of a light switch. When COVID-19 is safe to go out, light switch. That's a bad analogy. I made a mistake in picking that one. I think
Kaumil called you out on it. I've listened to the audio.
Well, I'm just saying it's not a light switch. It's
about being called out by Kaumil.
It's more like a dimmer switch. It's like a dimmer switch where we're at zero now. Maybe we dial it up to 40 and then 60 and then 80 over time. But they're not going to go out and celebrate. Like you said, the on-premise guys, the ones that can make it through COVID-19, they're not all going to make it post-COVID-19 either. And to your point about, I need to clear out tables, I need to clear out bar stools, people are going to be reluctant to go out. I was going to ask a question to JB. You're living in Colorado. Have you seen any impact in the cannabis sales? Have you seen any numbers on cannabis? Harry, have you? Or Kaumil, cannabis sales?
They're up. I read an article in Forbes this morning that's, you know, cannabis, porn, and alcohol are way up all over the. That tells you something about our nation's character.
But I mean, JB, have you heard anything about cannabis sales?
No, you know, I haven't. We do work in the cannabis space. Cannabis, the money was already starting to get tight before COVID hit, flowing into it. You know, I think we had more uncertainty even before COVID on maybe misplaced bets or how quickly things were going to come around. So I think there was already some uncertainty there before. And I think it has really made any cannabis assignments from a business standpoint really hard to get done. But from a consumer standpoint, I mean, it's no big secret. Most people that know me know I've been a cannabis user for quite some time. And I've been in a couple of dispensaries with to-go orders and things like that. And just talking to people behind the counter, their business is still incredibly strong. And most people are ordering online and it's ready to be picked up at the door or things like that. I see it probably just mirroring. I don't have any hard data to back this up, but I think it's probably mirroring the alcohol industry. You know, people are going through, these are very kind of unsettling times, if you will, and you can't leave and you're, you know, wanting to do something to relax. And again, like we spoke about 3 weeks ago in our last session like this, I think people are really grasping for some sort of normalcy. You know, I want something that's kind of normal in my life. And my normal thing before was maybe I'm going to have a couple of beers and maybe a little toke at the end of the day or something like that. And I just don't see that that's changed. If anything, I think the data is showing us that it's accelerating.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, we spoke with the BDS analytics folks a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, I guess. And I guess a couple of points. One is what's happening in cannabis is similar to what's happening in beverage alcohol, where folks are sticking to what they know. They're not walking into a dispensary and they're not going through an education process. They're not trying anything new. And for cannabis, that's an important part of the equation because it's a new industry. And the incremental consumer needs a bit of education, and you're not in a position to be able to do that. So it's almost like we're seeing in beers where big brands or known brands are doing better than others. The second piece on cannabis I think is notable is cannabis consumption has always been something that's been in smaller groups or alone, where beverage alcohol consumption often has been larger groups and social. And so we're kind of moving everybody into that kind of alone environment, which which serves itself well for where cannabis is meant to do well. And kind of the third thing that hadn't really thought about until recently is, and maybe there's some exceptions, but nearly every state every state where it's legal has kept cannabis open as an essential industry. And so you have all the states choosing it to be essential and necessary to stay open for a federally illegal product. And I think when we start to come out of this, that's probably a question or something that maybe needs to get thought of a little bit more, is that when it came down to real decision-making, most of the states concluded that it's an essential product.
Wow. That's a great point, because, and it kind of feeds into my next question is, we've seen a lot of relaxing of beverage alcohol laws, and like you said, even cannabis is considered essential. How do you go back? I mean, we've seen this issue in Kentucky with just kind of a free-for-all shipping to consumer. I don't think it will go back. I think the industry will fundamentally be changed because of this. I don't think you put toothpaste back in the tube. Well, I'm going to let you comment on that because I'm hogging the mic. But the other thing that I want to comment on is that I initially said that structurally this crisis favors beer, because beer is sold in every grocery store in the nation almost, and whereas liquor is not in about half. We really haven't seen that, have we, Bump? I mean, I think liquor's doing just fine, or JB.
Go ahead, Bump.
Yeah. So we've been tracking, I guess, a couple things on this. You've seen the double-digit increases for the beer category since week ending March 8th. What we all put a stake in the ground, said this is when COVID-19 hit the U.S. So from week ending 3/8 to week ending April 5th, beer has been on a consistent double-digit growth. Last week, we had a little bit of a fall off in terms of prior week's trends, but it's still double-digit. Wine has continued to outperform the growth curve of beer in fewer, to your point, Harry, fewer points of distribution in the off-premise arena because of the blue laws in the States. On top of that, we've seen spirits growing at a rate higher than wine, higher than beer. So it's a long marathon right now, and spirits is catching up, and they're catching up in a big way. To your point about laws changing, I think there's going to be a lot of laws changing after COVID-19, whether it's direct-to-consumer sales or the ability for small businesses to self-distribute. I think, and you and I think we're in Tennessee the last time we spoke to the Tennessee beer and wine distributors, and we talked about the change in laws there. I think what happened in Tennessee, where wine got into the off-premise arena and they got into grocery stores and took that shelf space, I think you're going to see some changes for the wine and spirits industry in the off-premise arena as well, where those points of distribution that beer enjoys right now over wine and spirits, I think they're going to get closed in a big way.
I think the most fascinating thing about the data that Bump just provided is beer turns quickly. And so if you're a beer drinker and you're drinking beer, you're going to turn back up and you're going to refill. Spirits doesn't turn nearly as fast. And so the speed at the fact that spirits have held that such high rates, in fact, I think, Bump, did you say it's accelerated, is noteworthy. Because usually spirits, you get a few bottles or you get whatever it is, and there's a longer period of time before you deplete what you have versus beer. But the fact that spirits have been able to stay so high for so long, I think is interesting.
I think a lot of it was before you found yourself locked in the house with 6 screaming kids for 3 weeks and decided that a couple of Coors Lights wasn't going to get it done, that you needed the big Orantini, as Harry called it.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a bang for the buck issue a little bit. And Kaumil, I think, said it best 3 weeks ago, that what this has done has shined a bright light on trends that were doing well and going one direction before this. Many of those trends have accelerated. And Harry, as you pointed out at your conference in January, we're talking about all this stuff about cannabis, but look at the spirits trends. They're the ones that have really been growing for some time, and they're still doing it. So I think what Kaumil said 3 weeks ago is holding true, that the brands that were doing well and were kind of tried and true and well branded before are kind of just accelerating.
Hey, have you guys seen that social media ad for wine where it's got to JB, to your point, it's got a mother with a big brown paper bag. She's bringing 3 kids. Did you see it?
No, I dropped off all that business.
Well, she's bringing 3 little kids home, and they're getting ready to have lunch. And she hands them each their sandwich out of the brown bag, and then she reaches in and she gets a couple of those juice boxes, the little small, and she jams a straw in there and gives it to each of the kids. And then she reaches in and pulls out a 3-liter box of wine and jams a big straw in there. That's what's going. I mean, that's one of the best things in the world. And that's exactly to your point. What's happening is in-home consumption for the stay-at-home moms or the stay-at-home workers. And let's face it, if we're in the office, we work late. You go in early, you work late, you spend an hour or so each way coming to and from work. Those extra couple hours are now spent enjoying a beverage, whether it's on the back deck or whatever, but consumption's gone up. And
that's a good point.
I think
Millicent's on this call to help me remember what we said. Millicent, can you comment on that? You're a stay-at-home mom. You have a 5-year-old daughter. Or maybe she's not on the call. I don't know.
Hi, guys. Yes, I am. I have noticed that I've noticed kind of 2 things to that point. I've noticed that I am drinking more often now, being at home, homeschooling a 5-year-old and trying to work. But I've also noticed that I don't drink as much not being at a bar, if that makes sense. So I am drinking more often, but I'm not drinking as much in those times that I am drinking.
You don't sit there and just get hammered every day?
No, about once a week.
Guys, one thing that we didn't talk about, but it's a real thing, and I think rightfully so. Before this, when we went out to bars, we watched our consumption and we drank moderately because of DUI laws and the safety issue and things like that. It's very real, and we need to pay attention to stuff like that. It's very easy to sit at home and go, to heck with it. I'm not driving anywhere. Yeah. I don't have to go anywhere. Why not have 2 more? Why not have 3 more? I'm not going anywhere.
If you do have kids at home, though, you don't want to put on a bad show.
Oh, no, I just make them go get the beer for me. It's great.
Well, I have a dog that does that for me. You want a Scooby snack? Oh, here you go. No. Scooby snacks. She gets Scooby snacks every 30 minutes. Okay, so let's keep this on track. We've gone adrift as usual. One of the things that's really surprised me, and I know you all talk to wholesalers just like I do, is that AB has not come out with any kind of plan on how they're going to collect their kegs, and they have the most kegs out in trade at this moment. Number 2 is that they keep pushing SKUs and new products and innovations on these poor distributors. And they're like, where are we going to put this shit? Listen, I don't want to rag on AB. I love those guys. All right. But what the, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but I'm shocked. World.
There's like a 3-part question to that, Harry. Have you figured out how much money that could cost Anheuser-Busch to help to split those costs with their distributors? I know Molson Coors stepped up early, and it was, I forget the number. Was it
It's at least $100 million for AB. It'd be $100 million.
Okay, I thought it'd be a lot higher than that, but okay, all right.
Well, probably, because it's probably $50 million to Miller Coors, and they have less than half the share in draft beer that AB does. So yeah.
Right. For some reason, I thought the numbers for Molson Coors were higher, but whatever it is, whatever Molson Coors costs are, AB is going to be 2x that. So I'm not sure where that's going to go. I think that this is where the role of the category captain is really paying dividends. Where if InBev wants to continue with Molson Coors, with Constellation, to bring out new products, new innovations, the distributors will get them on the shelf because the category captains will work with their retailers to get them there. That's number 2. The third thing is, I think the retailers and the distributors have already gone through a natural SKU rationalization with COVID-19, where a lot of brands that were supposed to hit the spring sets didn't make it. They just didn't make it because everybody called a timeout on that one. Distributors have been focusing on the brands that are in 24 and 30 packs. They've been focusing on the ones that they have a lot of inventory for, and they are their big mothership brewery continues to ship to them. So we're looking at brands, Budweiser, brands, Miller legacy brands, the Coors legacy brands, all those brands that I had written off at the end of 19, saying those brands that won't come back. Domestic lights won't come back, sub-premiums won't come back. They're back. And this natural SKU rat that the retailers have imposed is making its way to the distributors. And I think the distributors are now saying, I'll take more innovation because I'll get them on the shelf for it. That's my opinion on this one anyway. That's what I'm seeing.
That's interesting. That's contrarian. I like that.
Probably wrong.
Because honestly, I mean, there's a limited appetite from retailers, from what I see right now, on, hey, let's do anything with the shelves.
Or consumers to try something new that they haven't tried yet. But if AB gets it out there, or Molson Coors gets it out there, or Constellation with its Modalito or its Corona seltzers, if they get them out there, consumers are going to try it. They're just going to try it. And we saw that, I think we saw that last week, where I saw a decline in 30s and 24s and an increase in 12-pack again, where people already had their stockpile of their Bud, Miller, and Coors at home. Now I'm going to go out and buy a 12-pack of maybe something special. Maybe it's a Sam Adams lager, or maybe it's a Sierra Nevada hazy little thing. Maybe it's that new Trogs product, whatever it was going to be. We're seeing that happening. And this week we saw a bounce back to the multi-packs, 24s and 30s. So I think there's room for the bigger brewers. Size matters here. And I think those category captains those relationships are paying off right now. And obviously distributors will get it anywhere. That's my opinion.
What are we going to do with, I would say, is the biggest issue that the beer category in particular has that no other consumer category has? And that is I don't know, I want to say 7 to 10 million kegs that are out in the market right now going stale by the day, unpasteurized mostly. Nobody has the capacity to take them back all at once. And so it's got to be a slow fill. And, like you saw, I talked to Microstar last week. They're the largest owner of kegs in the market. They own 5 million alone. Does anybody have any insight to what we're going to fucking do with all those kegs?
I don't have a specific insight, but I will tell you, throughout history in America and in capitalism, somebody figures out a plan for stuff like this. There's usually someone who emerges and looks at a problem like this and figures out, can we turn it into fuel? Can we use the metal for something? Are those kegs? There was a time not that long ago where college kids figured out that the metal in the kegs was worth more than the deposit, and they started to trade them in elsewhere. And so
it would take them to scrap yards.
Yeah, they would take them to scrap yards and get paid more than the deposit.
It was literally a black market business for a while. They were sweeping the alleys of big cities when people used to stack their cooperage out back, and they were literally stealing cooperage and scrapping it. I remember those days.
And so I just wouldn't sleep on American ingenuity and capitalism to find an out. I don't know specifically what it is, but I suspect something will emerge.
About you, Kaumil, is that you're always optimistic. He is the sunniest motherfucker in the world. Don't y'all love Kaumil? He really is. He's always happy. He's always got and you're right. Ingenuity will save the day, as it always has and always will. And the one thing I look forward to is your daily kids news broadcast of the coronavirus. Your son hamming it up with his hand signal. He's doing sign language. I look forward to that Instagram every day. Those are awesome. Your kids are very clever, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Harry, Let me add one thing to this one is there's a couple retailers on the Eastern Seaboard that during COVID-19, in their top 5 selling packages was growlers. So I don't know if they struck a deal with their local distributors or maybe it was the local craft brewers, but in the top 5 are the growlers of some of these smaller brands, some of these more unique craft brewers that don't have a balanced portfolio of package versus draft. So I'm thinking that some of these local craft brewers reached out to some of these bigger retailers and said, look, we've got some great beer here that we've been selling direct to consumer. Would you think about taking that on board? They obviously go through the 3-tier system. They are doing it legally. The distributor gets it, they drop it off. And I mean, big ACV retailers in their top 5 selling packages have been growlers, not the crowlers, but the glass growlers. And it's a one-way thing. Is we're going to fill this up for you. It's sanitized. You take it. And that's getting rid of a drop in the bucket. Obviously, it's a couple barrels versus, all these other barrels that are out there. So.
That's the thing, Bump. It does help. Every little bit helps, but it's not a
right.
Not a huge thing. And like Kaumil said, like if there's anybody out there listening to this who has access to know how to decant these kegs to make hand sanitizer or to make or just as a mash to make whiskey or like I always said, it takes a lot of beer to make a little bit of whiskey, and it takes a little bit of vodka to write about beer, actually a lot. So what else? How about we have like I said, I wanted to try and keep this 30 minutes. So what kind of closing remarks does each of y'all have? We'll start with eeny, meeny, miny, Kaumil.
Look, I think things are still very obscure and vague, but less than they were 3 weeks ago when we all got together. I think we might be starting to see the efforts that the entire country is making take effect. It's a very, very long road. We did a call last week with all of our global beverage analysts and including our analyst in China. And, the workers are back, the demand's not back, but you can see it starting to trickle in. And you can see things start to move in a direction where you can at least start to see the future. You can start to see that it's coming back, as opposed to not that long ago, we didn't really know what was coming our way. And I think that's a good thing. I think there's going to be some permanent changes. This could be the moment where, after a generation of share losses, the domestic mainstream beer starts to stabilize. We're certainly seeing that happen now. Maybe Millicent is onto something. We're getting to that stage of everything the industry always wanted was to drink less more often, which is good for volume as long as one offsets the other. And that's something that could be happening. What I don't think is being discussed much, but perhaps, it will be in coming days, is we're not seeing a lot in terms of promo activity. And, retailers are worried about supply more than worried about competing with other retailers. And that's it's an interesting time where there's no promo activity. You've got growth rates in the 20s and 30s. And we're going to come out of this, we're 4 weeks into, I suppose, numbers, upwards of close to 20%. It's longer than I think we would have guessed. And if that continues, maybe there's more volume consumption than we would have anticipated when, we realized the unthinkable was true, which is the on-premise is going to be shut off for a period of time.
JB?
I think a couple of things, when we talked 3 weeks ago, the stimulus package wasn't even out yet. It was being discussed at $1 trillion. And I think we said then, this is going to be the first trillion of many. We've talked to a lot of brewers lately, and I would say less than half have money in hand that have actually received any funds yet. It's been complicated. The government pushed this thing through without any idea of really how to implement it. I'm not pointing fingers. This is unprecedented times. They had to do something. I think this money is going to evaporate into the wind much faster than people think. and they've put sort of a 2.5-month Band-Aid on a problem that's going to go on quite a bit longer than that. But again, you know me well enough. I'm a sunny side always as well. And, you know, patience, perspective, and perseverance will get you through a lot of things, and we will get through this. But I think we are very clearly going to be living in a pre-COVID-19 world and a post-COVID-19 world. And there will be a lot of things that change. Regulatory laws, maybe even some consumer behavior patterns. I'm personally not convinced that we're going to see a large resurgence long-term of domestic beer consumption. I still think it's a volume, comfort, ease of purchase. It's the most beer that's on the shelf right now. It's the most stocked. It's got the biggest back stock. But at the end of the day, the consumer patterns that were trending, I believe, will come back. It'll take some time, but I think we're a ways out of the woodwork from the financial pain that some of these breweries will feel. I don't think it's quite the panic mode that it was 3 weeks ago, but I agree with what Bump said earlier, that even when things, quote, come back, there were some people that were having some challenges in their business before. Those challenges will still be there. And there were people that have wonderful brands and a good consumer following, and those brands will be there as well, and they'll have probably great opportunity.
I might just add quickly, I know this is the end, but I'll be quick because it's, I think, important based on what JB said is, you know, most stimulus exists to stimulate demand, right? The money is in the pockets of your citizens go out and spend it. A lot of the money that's coming in right now is more of a survival than no one's going out shopping. Whether you received the 50% that received the check or not, are not going out themselves and spending it differently. It's really more of a just get by sort of thing. So as when we start to discuss the exit from the pandemic and we start to discuss demand, I think there's going to be a new component to what's driving that demand. This is not really a demand-driven stimulus from what we're seeing so far.
Well, first of all, thank you. Please explain to everybody why your name is Bump. Just for finally, after 30 years of knowing you, you won't ever, I've heard 5 or 10 different stories. Come on, let's
Let me take that one, Bump.
Let's speak.
I've got a story too. JB, you think my story is the same as your story?
The best way to save face is learn to keep the lower half shut. I'm going to let Bump handle this one.
My real name's Spanky, and I didn't like that. So, hey, Harry, thanks for setting this up again. I always look forward to this, and I learn a lot from JB and Kaumil and you, obviously. So thanks for doing this for us, but more importantly, thanks for doing it for your readers. I appreciate that. My analogy at the very end is similar to what I wrote to you this morning about we're in the middle of a baseball game and we're in a rain delay. That rain delay, it can't rain forever. And eventually that sun's going to break out. We're going to finish the game. And it kind of goes what JB was saying about optimism and Kaumil about being the sunny side up. So that sun's coming. We just got to hang tough. We got to hang together. I'm seeing great innovation come out of this, great new business strategies coming out of this. Partnerships are arising that I'm encouraged to hear that one. The one thing that I'll say at the very end is I think that the 3-tier system has done this industry well in terms of reinforcing the value, reinforcing the benefit that direct store delivered companies and businesses, the role they play. They have kept the beer shelves packed out. They've kept the wine shelves packed out. They've kept the spirit shelves packed out. And every single day, these drivers are going in to see their store managers, and they're building displays around the store and other places. They're making sure that consumers, when they go to that store, they don't see empty shelves and panic immediately arises. I think the retailers have done a phenomenal job at recognizing and rewarding their best partners, and that has been in the beverage alcohol business. I'll leave it at that.
I completely agree with you. The DSD model has really shown its finest hour. Really one of very few consumer goods categories which have not been completely out of stock.
Right. Yeah.
And, it's unbelievable, really. And I like I said last time, I follow this Beer Distros Anonymous, and they're like, we're essential. We're essential, you know, but those motherfuckers, they're out in the front lines every day.
Yep.
Putting themselves, frankly, at risk. I mean,
Mhm.
touching a lot of product, being out with consumers in the stores, merchandising, filling the shelves, building displays, and you gotta, they're kind of up there with the nurses and first responders, at least in relative to our industry. We're very fortunate to work in an industry that is still paying people to work. I mean,
Absolutely.
I look at all my friends here in San Antonio who are not in this industry, and they're hurting. I don't care if you're an affluent lawyer, you're not doing business right now. Okay. And so, we're so fortunate, and
Very.
right. I mean, it's and I always, every holiday, I always throw a shout out to the merchandisers of the world and pre-salesmen. This is an extended, long work holiday for these fuckers, and I feel for them.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So does anybody have anything else to add?
Stay safe, man. Be part of the
Millicent,
solution and not part of the problem.
Millicent? No. Okay.
No, I think they're good.
You know, Harry, in a world of constant change, I have to tell you that it is comforting to know that some things never change, and that's you, my friend.
I'm good. Thanks, man. It's all good. Stay safe out there. All
Got
right?
that covered.
Almost
Got that
almost
covered here at home.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Harry. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
JB. See you, partner. See you, Kaumil. See you,
Yeah.
Millicent.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Harry.
You betcha.
Hey, Millicent, is she still there? Is she? I was just gonna say thank you for the hat. Is Harry's gone too? All right, never mind.
It's just us, Kaumil.
It's just us, man. Just trying to keep.
Later, buddy. Stay safe, man.
You too. Talk to you later, man. Bye.